For centuries, Zoroth Prime had been a monument of peace in the Eastern Spiral, a planet of glittering cities carved into mountainsides, of scholars, healers, and poets. Its people, the Velathi, had no army. Their shields were diplomacy, and their weapons were wisdom. But wisdom means nothing when the stars themselves betray you. They came without a name, no demands, no broadcasts, no insignia, just black ships, silent and endless, appearing from deep void space like tumors in the night. The Velathi named them the Ashfall, for every world they'd touched was reduced to ash and silence. In less than a single rotation, half the planetary satellites were gone. Orbit burned, cities crumbled, oceans boiled where orbital fire touched the surface, and in the center of it all, the great capital city of Serandal, nestled in the mountain cradle, the High Command braced for extinction. Inside the subterranean. Council chamber. Every monitor flickered with the same haunting data: loss of control, breach warnings, life signals dropping by the thousands. The once smooth voice of the central AI stuttered beneath overload. High Matron Kayla, once a historian, now the last voice of leadership, stood silent, staring at the holographic map of her dying planet. Her pale fingers clenched behind her back. There was no more protocol, no more time. "We have no defenses left," whispered General Inan, voice shaking. "The last planetary shield failed 17 minutes ago." Kayla didn't respond. She couldn't. Not because she was afraid and she had passed fear, but because deep down she knew this wasn't just the end of her people. This was a message, being written in fire across the stars. A message to the rest of the galaxy. There is no one coming. No one will save you. Another tremor shook the command center. Panels sparked. Cries echoed down from the surface above. Serandal's outer walls, 800 years of architectural wonder, were falling. The Ashfall's dropships were already deploying. "This is extinction," Inan said. "We should activate the core failsafe and give them nothing." "Not yet," Kayla murmured. "What are we waiting for?" he snapped, despair rising. "A miracle. The Galactic Council already ignored our distress signal. No help is coming." She turned to him slowly, her eyes hollow. "We sent the old signal." The room fell into silence. Inan blinked. "You mean the myth?" She didn't blink. "I mean Earth." For a moment he said nothing. Then a laugh. Broken. Desperate. "Humanity hasn't been seen in 4 centuries. You think ghosts are going to fall out of the sky and save us?" "No," Kayla said softly. "So I think if they're still out there and if they hear us—" The lights flickered. A strange sound echoed through the chamber. Not a system error. Not a warning tone. Something different. A voice, cracked with static. Calm. Male. Signal. Received. Reinforcements inbound. ETA, 90 seconds, hold the line. Everyone froze. "What? Who was that?" Inan gasped. Kayla's hands trembled. Her voice didn't. Humans. The sky above Serandal split open with thunder, but there was no storm. Only pods, black burning through the atmosphere like meteors, falling fast, leaving white contrails in the darkening sky. Hundreds. No, thousands, each one falling with surgical precision toward the advancing Ashfall lines. Their dropships paused, their formations scattered. Inan whispered, "They're not just falling. They're attacking mid-descent." Kayla stepped forward, eyes wide, chest rising. "They're not pods," she said, a beat of silence. "I sound like the crack of the world breaking." The first impact hit, then another and another. The ground shook, buildings buckled, Ashfall walkers were thrown aside like toys. Then the pods opened and the humans emerged, clad in matte black, armor, faces hidden behind glowing visors. They rose from the craters like revenants. No hesitation, no introductions, only motion, fast, lethal, perfect. "Dear gods," Inan whispered. "They're—" Kayla's voice cut through the static. "Of shock, they're wolves. And the galaxy just remembered why it feared Earth." Smoke spiraled upward from scorched metal, drifting into the once crystal skies of Serandal. The mountain winds howled as if mourning the destruction below. But in the chaos, in the broken lines and shattered earth, something new had risen. The humans were on the ground. Kayla watched from the command center's viewport as the black armored figures advanced. Not charging, slicing forward with terrifying precision. Every step calculated, every motion purposeful. The Ashfall soldiers, monstrous in size and brutality, barely had time to raise their weapons. The humans struck like a scalpel. Tight. Formations, synchronized movement, no wasted fire. And they didn't speak. They didn't yell orders or bark commands. Their helmets remained sealed, their voices locked in encrypted internal comms. From the outside, it looked like they operated by instinct, as if they had trained for this exact scenario and every other possibility that might follow. Inan leaned in toward the feed. They're not using energy weapons. No, Kayla said, narrowing her eyes. Kinetic railguns, Gauss rifles, blunt trauma, bullet fire. Primitive. Devastating. Each shot from the human rifles shredded Ashfall armor like it was paper. Explosive rounds ruptured exosuits. EMP grenades sent mech walkers convulsing, before collapsing in twisted heaps. But it wasn't just the firepower. It was the terror. The Ashfall, an empire that had reduced 12 civilizations to ruin, were faltering. They were unaccustomed to resistance. They expected screams, panic, retreat. They weren't ready for wolves with no fear. On the field, human soldiers didn't stop. They didn't dodge unnecessarily. They advanced under fire with mechanical grace, overwhelming, unrelenting, and then something new dropped from the sky. Larger pods, 3 of them spaced exactly across the battlefield. They landed like thunderbolts, flattening armored columns around them. The dust hadn't even settled before the pod walls exploded outward. Not with fire, but with light. From inside stepped the heavies, larger human units, nearly 10 feet tall in exoskeletal-powered suits, carrying rail cannons the size of Valithi doors. One swept its cannon in a lazy arc. The beam that followed cut. A dropship in half. Inan stepped back from the display. Monsters, he said. Kayla didn't look away. No. Monsters don't protect people. These are something else. Outside, the Ashfall commander units tried to regroup. Dropships circled in retreat. Ground squads fell back, dragging wounded, attempting to reposition. Too late. The humans dropped. Interceptor drones. Small spider-like automatons that burst from their armor and ran ahead, latching onto retreating enemies and detonating with magnetic charges. One by one, the Ashfall flanks collapsed. A full line wiped in under 7 minutes. In the command chamber, a new signal lit up the feed. A human helmet appeared, black visor, unreadable expression. Then, a voice, calm, gritty, absolute. Commander. Kayla of the Velithi, this is Captain Riker, Earth Expeditionary Force. You will hold the capital. Reinforcements are still inbound. Kayla's throat tightened. You heard our signal? His head tilted slightly. We never stop listening. Why now? A pause. Because the galaxy forgot fear, and you reminded us it was time. She felt the floor tremble as another Ashfall carrier exploded in the distance, a streak of blue fire lancing through the sky. What happens now? She asked. Riker didn't hesitate. Now we teach them why humanity was left alone for 400 years. The screen cut. Outside, the humans pushed forward, wave after wave of Ashfall resistance falling like autumn leaves in a hurricane. And above, the battle, the dark sky opened once more, not with ships, but with Earth's real army. Kayla stepped forward, her voice quiet. They fell from the sky, she whispered. But they don't fight like soldiers. No, Inan said, voice dry with awe. They fight like extinction. The galaxy was watching now, from orbiting satellites on neutral moons, from pirate stations hidden in asteroid belts, from deep void. Research colonies that hadn't spoken to Earth in centuries. The feed spread like wildfire. Zoroth Prime under siege, Velithi collapsing, and then Earth. The footage was brutal. Ashfall tanks exploding before they could fire. Dropships turned into tumbling husks mid-air, soldiers in obsidian black armor moving like shadows through smoke, emerging from fire. Unburned, cutting down enemies with cold precision. Every planet with access to blacknet streams tuned in. Every soldier who'd once scoffed at humanity paused. Every politician who ignored the distress signal regretted it. And in the Galactic Council chambers, a hush fell over the Great Hall. The Varnai ambassador, once a loud advocate for non-intervention, stared in silence at the holoscreen. It showed 3 human soldiers breaching a fortified bunker, killing 15 Ashfall warriors in 9 seconds. "They move like they've trained for this all their lives," he muttered. "They probably have," whispered a council analyst. Earth was never peaceful. They didn't evolve on a cradle, they evolved in chaos. Back on Zoroth Prime, the sky above Sirandal boiled with smoke and flame, and through it, more pods descended. Kyla and Inan stood on the outer balcony of the Citadel now, high above the battlefield. The air smelled of ash and ozone. Lightning licked across the sky from plasma discharges. Still the pods fell, each one hit like a meteor, each one opened with purpose. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of human soldiers now moved through the mountainside. Ruins, reclaiming ground the Valethi had already surrendered in their minds. "They don't leave wounded behind," Inan observed. "Every time I think one's down, 2 others drag him back. They carry each other." "They're not just fighting," Kayla said. "They're protecting." That was the part no one expected. Not just the firepower, not just the brutality, but the discipline, the restraint. Human soldiers pulled wounded Velethi out of fallen towers mid-battle. One squad used their own armor to shield civilians from an orbital bombardment. Another refused to leave a crashed shuttle full of injured until reinforcements arrived. Despite being surrounded, the Ashfall had never seen it. No one had. A species that could burn you down with a stare and still carry your children to safety. That was what terrified people most. On the western ridge, one of the Ashfall command mechs, 3 stories tall, bristling with cannons, made a desperate charge. It fired indiscriminately, mowing through trees and corpses, trying to break the human line. 3 soldiers broke formation. One carried a magnetic harpoon. One carried a charge pack. The last carried nothing but a blade. They moved like smoke. Fast. Too fast. The mech turned too late. One harpoon pierced its side, dragging it down. The blade carved open its joint actuator, and the third planted the explosive. The mech screamed, then it folded inward on itself and exploded like a dying star. The humans didn't wait to celebrate. They moved on. From the Citadel balcony, Kayla's voice trembled. "They don't break. They don't even pause." Inan turned toward her. "Did you know they were like this?" "I didn't know they were real." Far above them, the sky changed again. But this time, it wasn't fire. It was steel. The clouds parted as the first Earth. Fleet dropped from FTL, black vessels shaped like knives without ornament or color. Silent, sleek. They didn't hail the planet. They didn't introduce themselves. They just positioned and opened their hangars. From orbit, new waves of drones descended, thousands of them forming walls of hovering metal. Their red optics swept across the battlefield, scanning, tracking, isolating. Kayla's heart skipped. What are they doing now? Inan didn't answer, because at that moment the Ashfall began to run. Their great army, once the scourge of 12, systems now retreated. Dropships lifted off in desperation. Ground troops scattered. Command signals went dark. Humanity wasn't defending anymore, they were hunting. And the galaxy now understood the truth. Earth never stayed silent because it was weak. It stayed silent because no one was worth waking the wolves. The Ashfall didn't run far. They couldn't. Their retreat turned to chaos within minutes. Escape ships were tracked mid-air and torn down by precision rail fire from Earth's orbital vessels. Drones intercepted landing pads before ships could even lift off. From above, it looked less like a battle and more like a surgical dissection. Each human unit moved with mathematical precision, cutting off supply lines, jamming comms, baiting. Commanders into ambush zones designed hours ago. They didn't need superior numbers. They just needed timing. Inside the Ashfall flagship, a scarred, hulking vessel hidden deep in a mountain bunker, Commander Vurok slammed his metal fist against the control panel. "We outnumber them," he snarled. "They're just humans. Primitive, fractured, chaotic." A technician choked out a reply. With respect, sir, they're not fractured, they're coordinated. Perfectly. Vurok turned toward the battlefield display. What he saw broke his confidence. Human fire teams weaving through ashfall legions, like water through cracks. Squads disappearing into smoke, only to reappear on the flanks minutes later. Mines triggered only when the maximum number of ashfall. Troops stood above them. Sniper drones targeting only officers, squad leaders, and medics. Every move was an answer to a move that hadn't even happened yet, and at the edge of the command center, a faint message pulsed through static. "We warned you." Vurok stepped back, his voice hoarse. "They're not fighting for dominance, they're fighting for retribution." On the field, the Velethi survivors, wide-eyed and injured, had begun to regroup under human protection. They were given food, clean water, pain suppressors, all without words. Just silent handoffs and nods from soldiers who moved past them toward the next wave of war. Kayla stood at the medical triage site, watching a pair of human medics reset the leg of a child they had no obligation to help. "Why, are you here?" she asked quietly, not expecting an answer. The nearest soldier looked up. His voice was calm, not robotic. "Human. Because you called for help." "That's it?" she asked. He looked back down. "Isn't that enough?" Behind them, another wave of explosions echoed up the hills, and Kayla saw it, the last remaining. Ashfall legions, clustered, desperate, drawing back into the burned forests. "They're regrouping," she whispered. Inan appeared beside her, gripping his broken shoulder. "One last push." "No," Kayla said, her voice cold now. "It's a last breath." In orbit, aboard the Earth dreadnought Erebus, Captain Riker stood in the command center. Around him, AI advisors and armored tacticians whispered through. "Data overlays and live feeds. They're digging in," his lieutenant said. "They've set up command bunkers. Power readings show deep core reactors online. Tunnel grid? Crude but connected. They're betting on a siege." Riker nodded. "They want us to come to them." He turned to the operations board. "Then, we won't." With a gesture, he pulled up the Crows, a dark, restricted-class file. Weapons not used since the fall of New Beijing. Silent drones that didn't just kill, they haunted. Deploy the Crows. Send them in low. Tell them to sing. On Zoroth's burning surface, the wind shifted. No sound came at first. No new ships, no new artillery. Just a hum, too low to hear, but enough to make the ground vibrate. Then they saw them, black-winged shapes skimming treetop level. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. No engines, no light, no noise but the faint whisper of air. The ashfall raised weapons, too slow. The Crows struck without contact. Sonic pulses through helmets, magnetic surges in weapons, bio-neural disruption. The ashfall screamed. As their own suits locked up, some vomited, others collapsed, blood leaking from ears. One tried to run. A Crow simply followed. It didn't fire. It just stared. The soldier dropped dead 2 minutes later. Heart failure from stress. Back in the triage zone, Kayla saw them pass overhead. Her voice barely left her throat. "What are those?" Inan spoke without breath. "Judgment. Inside." "The Ashfall flagship," Vurok howled into the comms. "They're using psychological warfare, ghost units, drones without signatures. We need reinforcements." He paused. Silence. No replies from orbit, no signals from the fleet, just one incoming. "Transmission. How you burn too many homes. You silence too many screams. Now Earth speaks back," and then the signal cut. Outside, the ashfall trenches exploded inward, not from bombs, but from within. The Crows had reached the end. No survivors, no prisoners, no noise. Kyla stood in the center of a battlefield that was no longer burning. Smoke curled like breath. Human soldiers walked silently past her, blood splattered and methodical. Some knelt by the fallen, even ashfall, not to gloat, not to harm, but to cover the dead. "They could have left us to die," Inan whispered. "They didn't," she said. And far above, in orbit, the Erebus pulsed with activity, because this wasn't the end, not for Earth, not yet. Above the scorched valleys of Zoroth Prime, the wreckage drifted like broken wings. Ashfall dropships spun in death spirals. Craters stretched for kilometers. Towers collapsed inward like snapped bones. And from orbit, Earth's fleet hovered in perfect silence, black monoliths unmoving as if daring the galaxy to breathe too loud. But Earth wasn't done. Not yet. In the shattered dark of Sector Theta, the Ashfall High Command had fled. Beneath her dead ocean trench on the outer moon Kasari, they gathered what was left of their officers, ships and pride. Commanders shouted over each other. Strategists uploaded corrupted combat data. Generals argued about fallback positions. In the middle of it all, Prime Executor Vos Taran stood staring at a silent screen, his jaw clenched, black veins glowing along his temple from stress drugs. Behind him, a strategist spoke cautiously. "We've lost 40% of the planetary divisions. The rest are in retreat or missing. Communications are compromised. Human infiltration units have scrambled our long-wave encryption," Taran said. "Nothing. They're ghosts," the strategist said. "They don't speak, they don't signal, they just arrive, kill, leave." Finally, Taran turned. His voice was raw. "Ghosts don't fly ships the size of cities. Ghosts don't kill fleets. This is not mythology. This is Earth." The room fell still. He stared at the burning world on the screen. Where the hell were they hiding all this? Back on Zoroth, Kayla watched the remains of the Ashfall encampment be swept clean by human engineers. It was methodical. No looting, no scorched earth. Drones picked through rubble for survivors. Fallen civilians were carried out with the same reverence as soldiers. It was victory, yes, but it felt like something else. A warning. She approached one of the black-armored officers, tall, silent, standing near a relay tower with a red glow, rifle slung low. "Captain Riker," she said softly. He turned. She wasn't sure if the glow from his visor dimmed or if her heart just skipped. "Your troops are rebuilding? After what happened?" "We don't destroy what we're asked to protect," he said simply. Kayla hesitated. "I don't understand. You've been silent for 400 years. Earth withdrew. The galaxy forgot you existed. And now you arrive with this fury." Riker stared into the horizon. "We watched. Why?" He glanced down at her, his voice low, almost too soft to hear. "Because they needed to believe we were gone, so when we returned they would listen." On Kasari's moon, the Ashfall command fleet stirred. Dozens of remaining dreadnoughts formed a loose blockade formation in orbit. Missile arrays were loaded, cannons aligned, escape routes plotted. Vos Taran stood at the bridge of his flagship, a towering structure built for planetary sieges. "This time, we bring the fight to them." A tactician leaned in. "Sir, Earth ships aren't built for prolonged siege combat. If we engage them in open space..." Taran turned to him, eyes blazing. "You think I'm fighting to win?" He gestured to the screen. "To Earth's black fleet surrounding Zoroth like silent judges. I'm fighting to show the rest of the galaxy that humans bleed too." He shouldn't have said that. Because the moment the fleet began to move, the moment the dreadnoughts angled their cannons and fired the first salvo toward Zoroth's orbit, Earth replied. Not with words, not with ships, but with Division 9. They didn't come in pods. They didn't descend like meteors. They blinked into existence through dark matter rupture gates. A technology lost to time, banned by every civilized race for the last 1,000 years. But Earth never forgot. They just waited until someone deserved it. Taran watched in horror as 12 dark ruptures tore open in the heart of his fleet formation. Ships imploded from inside, power grids overloaded, lights flickered and went out, and then they came. The Black Wolves, special units. Biomechanical armor. Human, yes, but something else too, sharper, colder, without names, just kill codes. Taran screamed, "Fire! Fire! Kill them!" It didn't matter. One by one, his dreadnoughts went dark. Not from explosions, from systemic collapse. These weren't ships, they were lessons. Back on Zoroth Prime, the Council broadcast lit up. The whole galaxy saw it. Prime Executor Vos Taran, former Ashfall leader, pulled from the wreckage of his flagship, bound, bleeding, and silent as a single human soldier dragged him across the wreckage. No words were spoken. No trial was promised. Only one signal was transmitted to the galaxy. This is what happens when you bring war to Earth's door. Kayla watched the footage in stunned silence. "They didn't come for victory," she said. "No," Riker replied. "We came for closure." And above them more ships warped in, because Earth was done hiding. Now it was time to clean house. The galaxy shook, not from explosions, not from another battle, but from the echo of silence. A silence created when Vos Taran, the voice of the Ashfall supremacy, a tyrant who once promised to burn 12 systems to ash, was dragged broken and breathless before every broadcast channel in the quadrant. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just stared. And behind him stood the soldier who had taken him. Not a general, not a king, just a black-armored ghost with no rank insignia, no name, and no mercy. That silence spoke louder than 1,000 declarations of war, because Earth didn't send a warning. It sent judgment. In the Galactic Council chambers, arguments raged like fire. Ambassadors from over 24 species crowded the marble halls, demanding answers, protection, and action. The Kraith speaker slammed his four-clawed hand down on the pulpit. Earth used illegal quantum warfare to assassinate a head of state. This cannot stand. The Varnai diplomat shook his head. Vos Taran was a butcher. Earth did the galaxy a favor, the Sereth delegate hissed. But how did they do it? That fleet, they moved without detection, their weapons uncountered, their troops immune to EMP, plasma, neural gas, and those Black Ops divisions. The ambassador from the neutral Synthari alliance whispered what no one else dared say. Aloud, we thought they were extinct. We thought Earth had gone quiet. We never asked why. Back on Zoroth Prime, the dust was finally beginning to settle. The capital had been reduced to scorched steel and broken glass, but it still stood. And more importantly, it lived. Where there was once fire, there were now drone scaffolds rising into the sky. Portable water units hummed beside shelters built from ship hulls. Medical bays overflowed not with blood, but with survivors. Velithi children played among the ruins, chasing friendly Earth bots shaped like animals. Kayla stood beside Captain Riker atop the Citadel ruins, watching a new comms array come online. You rebuilt half a city in 3 days, she said, still in disbelief. Riker didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the horizon. We didn't rebuild. We prepared. For what? He finally turned. For what comes next? Far across the stars, in the uncharted region known only as the Gravefold, a long-forgotten fleet drifted in silence. These weren't Ashfall ships. These were worse. Remnants of an older empire, one that vanished after a single skirmish with Earth nearly 5 centuries ago. The last message they had sent back then simply read, "Do not approach Sol." Now watching the new Earth broadcasts, watching the crows, the black wolves, the instant orbital dominance, they knew. Earth hadn't grown weaker. It had grown ready. One of the old admirals leaned into his console and whispered the command none of his crew had expected to hear again. Initiate defensive withdrawal. Erase all records of hostile plans toward humanity. Do not provoke the storm. In orbit above Zoroth aboard the Earth dreadnought Erebus, the final report was logged. The Ashfall fleet was gone. Their empire fragmented. Their worlds rising in rebellion. But that wasn't what made Riker stare so long at the message in front of him. It was the Council's official response, a statement sanitized for public channels, offering thanks to Earth for their assistance in a time of crisis, and a request for collaborative diplomacy moving forward. Riker scoffed. They don't get it, he muttered. Beside him, the fleet AI blinked online. Do you wish to respond, Captain? He stared at the screen, at the words, the lie of civility. Then, finally, he spoke. Transmit 2 words. Which 2, sir? He didn't hesitate. Never again. That message reached every major system. It appeared not as a threat, but as a boundary, a line drawn in silence, a reminder, because the galaxy now understood. Humanity didn't ask for peace. It didn't plead for allies. It didn't come as conquerors, but it came when it was called. And if you dared to awaken it again, you wouldn't face warriors. You wouldn't face an army. You would face something far worse. Earth, fully prepared. The dust had settled. The blood had dried. But the fear had only just begun to spread. Across the galaxy's outer rim, where pirate clans once laughed at Earth's silence, their stations now sat dark. On the diplomatic cores of the mid-galactic spires, where Earth had once been a forgotten footnote in council archives. Now every chamber whispered its name. And in the deepest intelligence networks, where classified war scenarios were modeled endlessly, Earth had suddenly gone from low-priority relic to uncontainable anomaly, the worst kind. Back on Zoroth Prime, the black banners of Earth's Expeditionary Corps had been lowered. Their ships didn't parade in victory. Their soldiers didn't stay to bask in glory. One by one they vanished. No fanfare, no goodbyes. Just a trail of rebuilt water systems, stabilized infrastructure, neutralized bioweapons, and zero civilian casualties recorded under their command. The humans didn't stay for thanks. They left behind something else, a signal, one that could only be heard on the high-bandwidth emergency frequencies once used by ancient Earth fleets. A simple rotating data packet, quietly broadcasting 3 encrypted words. Stand by Phase 2. Kayla stood beneath the old comms tower, holding the decrypted version of the transmission in her hands. It didn't make sense. Zoroth was safe. The HFY were dead or scattered. The cities were being rebuilt. "What's Phase 2?" she asked aloud, confused. Behind her, Enan walked up slowly, his arms still in a brace. "Maybe it's a fallback command," he offered. "Some kind of protocol." Kayla shook her head. No, Riker wasn't planning a retreat. He was planning something else, something bigger. Her voice dropped lower. He wanted us to see what they could do, so others would see it too. On Velen Station, orbiting the neutral world of Listhan, an emergency session of the Galactic Council was in full panic mode. Every major faction had deployed analysts, diplomats, and war historians to a central summit. For the first time in known galactic history, every chair was filled, but it wasn't a session of unity, it was fear management. "This is not sustainable," barked the Jakari warlord. "We can't allow a single species to wield this much power without oversight." "Earth only acted because we did nothing," hissed the Arthurian envoy. "You ignored Zoroth's distress signal," Earth responded. The Synthari delegate adjusted her neural visor, showing playback footage of a single human operative disabling a dreadnought's control bridge in 18 seconds. She turned toward the room. "You still think this is about morality. But humans don't fight wars the way we do. They don't fight to win, they fight to end." A heavy silence. Then a voice from the back of the chamber, raspy and low. They were just warming up. Every head turned. It was the representative of the Threxan remnant, a dying empire that once tried to invade Mars in the old Sol rebellions. One of the few still alive who had faced Earth and lived. "They haven't changed," he said. "They just stopped explaining themselves." Back on Zoroth's rebuilt capital, the final human ship lingered in low orbit, a strange, angular vessel with no visible engines, no markings, and a hull that bent light unnaturally. Inside, Captain Riker stood in a dim chamber before a holographic display. It showed 20 dots. Each one represented a world. Ashfall occupied, Council ignored. Suffering. The AI beside him spoke calmly. "Phase 2 clearance granted. Shadow fleets are in motion. Operation Gideon is green." Riker nodded once. "Deploy the scouts. Begin silent infiltration. No announcements, no demands. This time, they don't get a warning. And if resistance is encountered?" He turned toward the viewport, watching the stars blur as the ship prepared for jump. "They'll remember Zoroth, and they'll know what comes next." Kyla never saw Riker again, but weeks later, in a quiet archive near the new Velethi University dome, she received a package. Inside, a small black data chip. No label, no encryption, just one file. A message. "You called, we answered. We leave you your world, your peace, and your future. But remember this. If the stars go silent again and the wolves fall from the sky, it means Earth is awake. And Earth is not kind when it's awake." Across the galaxy, people whispered stories now. Stories of a species that once burned in chaos, that vanished by choice and returned by necessity. Children reenacted Earth drop pods in playfields. Soldiers restructured their entire training programs based on human combat footage. And pirates. They moved their bases farther, always farther from Sol, because no one knew what Phase 2 meant. But everyone understood this. You don't make Earth fight twice. The stars above Vaskel 5 had no name for mercy. The planet was a red wound, flayed, open by orbital mining cannons, ash choking the air and slaves working under the black banners of what remained of the Ashfall holdouts. No transmissions, no survivors reported. Just silence and screams beneath the dust, until the clouds parted and Earth returned. But this time there were no pods, no thunder, no heroic speeches, no visual markers, only shadows. Within minutes of arrival, Vaskel's orbital defenses began, shutting down one by one, not destroyed, disabled, silently, efficiently, like they had never existed. On the surface, Ashfall taskmasters ran to their comm towers, found nothing, no radar, no signals, no hope. And then, without a sound, the wind changed. They emerged from the mines first, black-armored shapes dragging freed prisoners, some of them barely alive. The slaves didn't scream. They didn't run. They just stared. Because above them, standing still amid the smoke, were humans. Covered in ash, armor scuffed, visors glowing faint red like dying suns. The wolves had come again. The last Ashfall stronghold fell in under 11 minutes. That was how long it took Earth's ground division to eliminate a fully entrenched fortress with over 1,000 enemy soldiers. 2 artillery lines and a nuclear failsafe device, 11 minutes. Because this time they didn't fight for survival, they fought for closure. In orbit, aboard the Black Ops command vessel Oblivion, the final report was logged. Operation Gideon. Complete. All Ashfall assets neutralized. 0 civilian casualties. No tactical losses. Message delivered. Captain Riker stood silent at the viewport, watching Vaskel's sun rise for the first time in decades, without smoke blocking its light. Beside him, the ship's AI pulsed softly. All fleets reporting in, Phase 2 terminated, awaiting new directive. Riker didn't answer. He watched the light creep across the ruined world. This was the cost of the galaxy's silence. This was what happened when kindness was mistaken for absence. He finally spoke. Transmit final signal to the Council. Contents? He turned his back on the viewport and walked into the dark. Just the coordinates of Vaskel. Let them come see what we buried. Far away in the high halls of the Galactic Council, the message arrived. No words, just numbers. And in the silence that followed, the truth settled in every heart, across every empire, in every species. Earth had no interest in conquest. But if called again, it would not come to save. It would come to finish. Months passed. Zoroth Prime flourished. Kayla became the new Chancellor of the Valithi Restoration Council. Children learned history again, not just poetry and science, but what Earth taught them. Survival is not given, peace is not passive, and mercy must never be mistaken for weakness. She stood once more on the rebuilt citadel wall, looking toward the stars, and whispered something to herself no historian would record. If they fall from the sky again, I hope they fall for us. Across the stars, in forgotten corners of space, Earth's fleets disappeared once more. No flags, no broadcasts, just readiness, because this time the galaxy had learned the lesson. You can ignore a world, you can dismiss a species, you can bury its name in dust, but you never, ever wake the wolves twice.